Good evening. You're watching The Digital Age, and this is James Goodale. We've got a great show for you tonight. We're going to talk about Iowa. And we're going to talk about Iowa in terms of personalities. We want to compare Mike Huckabee with Hillary. And we want to ask the question, is Hillary too grim to win? Here tonight to discuss that big, great philosophical question is Mark Green, who is president of Air America. He was New York City's public advocate. He ran for the Senate. He ran for Attorney General. He's been in public policy all his life. Welcome to Digital Age.
I'm delighted to be here, Jim. Thank you.
Now, if I have my wits about me, I'm also going to ask...
And you do.
I do? Thank you. I'm also going to ask, is Air America too grim to win? Because you took it out of bankruptcy. But let's look at the Iowa events first. Let's ask this question. Would you agree with me that Barack Obama is the real internet horse in the race? Because two things. He used the internet to raise so much money, and I think he probably was able to use the internet very well in Iowa and getting so many people out. And the big story in Iowa was the huge turnout. What do you think of that? Do you think anyone else competes with him as an internet candidate?
Probably not. The standard on the internet, and you know this better than I, is whoever is closer in age to 12 uses the internet the best. And since Obama is 46, but Hillary Clinton is 60, therefore, proportionally, he's better. Until the Iowa results, John Edwards was doing a little better in the blogosphere because he was more ardently anti-war and more populist and progressive. We'll see whether he can go the distance. Obama obviously will go the distance. I think Hillary Clinton will go the distance. On the Republican side, they seem to be computer ignorant. Yeah. I mean, they use it, but if you look at Facebook, if you look at the number of hits, the number of mentions in the blogosphere, it's way below the Democrats. So your milieu is Obama's. And you could have been Obama if you would run, and he could have been hosting your show.
Well, 50 years younger, I could be Obama. You know what? You know, there was a huge turnout in Iowa from the, I think you can be 17 in Iowa and vote in the caucus as long as you're 18 by election day. From 17 to 30, I think it was maybe as high as 20% of the turnout. Right. And they apparently went like 80, 60, 70, 80% for Obama. So would that mean anything for the general election if Obama would make it that far? Do you get that many people out?
Well, the cliche has, you know, remember 40 years ago, safety doesn't sell in Detroit. And then they made cars that were safer and they sold. The cliche is young people don't vote, or they vote disproportionately less than older people. That's always been true. Obama is so young and attractive, and his two books are so exciting and eloquent. And his whole imagery, he stands for hope and change. By the way, any candidate who can embody and copyright the words hope and change wins. I don't care what else is going on. So the young flock to him. So at the least, he was a Pied Piper. We'll see if he'll be a president. I think he got something like, in a multi-candidate field, over half the young vote. Hillary Clinton got over half the vote over 65. Yeah. In the general election, it's very hard to substantially change voting patterns nationally in a general election. Obama did it with 99 counties, and he could focus millions of dollars in ads and organization and volunteers in one state. If he did it nationally, it would be unprecedented, but not now. Impossible.
But do you think that the net will bring out more people from 20 to 30 than it has in the past? It may have done that in Iowa. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah. I looked at the net numbers because I run Air America Radio, and it was something like in 2004, 10 to 15% of Americans got most of their information online. 2006, 25%. 2008, a third or more. We see the trend lines. Yeah. It's this ubiquitous, free medium that there's been nothing like it.
Does Air America have a dog in this fight?
No, I can't.
Well, how does I was going to pick on you a little bit about Air America after we address the principal question, but since you talk with such expertise and enthusiasm about Obama, it just occurred to me that Air America is the liberal, supposed to be liberal radio, at least historically it was. I assume it still is. And I would have thought they'd have a liberal dog in the fight.
Well, institutionally, I'm like Jeff Zucker at NBC. I wish. He may prefer X, but he doesn't say it because the network has to be neutral. Yeah. I want the bona fide candidates to feel like they have equal and fair access to Air America. And in fact, Kucinich and Clinton and Obama and Edwards and Richardson, they've all been on Air America multiple times. We have 2 million people listening, largely progressive, largely Democrat, and it's a great audience for them. I personally am staying neutral. I'm closest to Hillary Clinton over the years and to Bill Clinton over the years. I had to tell the candidates they would have to win without me. This was a stunning and, if not shattering, morning. They overcame it, and they're still running. However, our hosts, I don't tell them what to say, who to interview. It's host-driven. I would say most of our hosts are for Obama or Edwards. I would say the audience, based on how I hear people calling in and people emailing in, were probably disproportionately for Kucinich and Edwards because they were the two most ardently anti-war. I would say Hillary Clinton was the least favorite of the Air America audience because she seemed to be more, and this is among her problems politically and tonally, the insider candidate, the establishment candidate. And one of the things I think that happened, and here I'm now speaking more objectively because I'm not a supporter of anyone, her campaign allowed her to look like Walter Mondale in 1984, who was the establishment, insider, big-moneyed, centrist candidate. And when you're dealing with the worst American president ever, by a lot, which we can get to in another show, this impulse for change is not just sloganeering. She got on the wrong side of the issue of change in terms of Democrats seeking a post-Bush president. And her campaign let that happen.
Well, let's put the issues just aside for a moment. And you've been in politics a long time. You know there's more to politics than issues. Personalities are a big part of it. And we said at the outset that we compare the personality and the performance of Mike Huckabee, of course, won in Iowa, and Hillary Clinton, who, of course, well, she came in third, but she lost for all practical purposes. I wonder, see what you think about this, if Hillary Clinton did poorly, among other things, because, simply put, she doesn't have a sense of humor. Now, I wonder if Mike Huckabee won because he's such a fantastic comedian.
Now, you're onto something.
Yeah, well,
which
tell me
is
what
why I've heard that Jay Leno will be running in 2012. You see,
Jay Leno had Huckabee on, but he didn't have her on.
Right. Well,
well, I wonder why.
We know why.
Oh, well, we know why. Okay.
She wouldn't cross a picket line, and he would for
okay.
publicity. Yeah. We're getting, first of all, Mike Huckabee, who I've never met, I just watch, is so delicious. He is great speaker. He's calm. He did a press conference at a key moment just before Iowa, getting a haircut. He answered very hard questions. You know, he's being loud. He says, well, you know, I think this. And he was charming and quick-witted, and he made jokes about the Beatles because he's, in fact, an expert musician. And he talked about poor people. Here's a Republican conservative who, following the lessons of his savior, Jesus Christ, talks more about the poor people than the rich getting tax breaks. Enormously winning.
He's delicious.
So winning. I asked Ron Reagan, Jr., who comes on Air America.
Who's on your program, yeah.
Does he remind you in that way of your father? Because both Ronald Reagan, the governor and president, and Mike Huckabee, the governor and potential president, I guess, were broadcasters and could talk the religious talk and were publicly charming raconteurs who could tell a story. And to that extent, not the hair maybe, or they were very similar. The problem is, if this keeps going, we will have professional entertainers. You know, I can see a Letterman Stewart ticket. Now, Hillary Clinton.
Well, let's go to, but sir, it's just, I mean, you've got to be entertaining, don't you, Mark, when you get out there?
It depends on the
politics entertainment in some point?
Yes.
Okay, talk about Hillary in that context.
Well, if the election, like in 2002, it was after 9/11 attack, my guess is the more serious and experienced candidates would do better than a wisecracking candidate because the international issues were so paramount.
Right.
As we enter 2008, for whatever reason, the economy and healthcare are now superseding even terrorism and national security, although that could change, God forbid, in an instant. So while a sense of humor is appealing, whether it's decisive depends on the year. Now, Hillary Clinton.
Can I just stop you there?
Please.
Because I think you make a very good point when you talk about the election in 2008, but we're not there yet. Do you feel the same about the primaries, where all you're getting is quick snapshots of these people? I would have thought that the argument for Huckabee would be those debates, the Republican debates, were so boring and so awful that when someone came around and wisecracked and was funny, he stood up.
He stood out.
And he stood out, and you liked his personality, so you voted for him. Now, these primaries are coming on fast because there's Super Tuesdays in February. We may not have a chance to get to the real bread and butter issues. We'll get to the change and experience issue, but the bread and butter, we may not get to. So isn't the quick quip going to be useful even for Hillary, and can she quick quip?
Two things. Hillary Clinton told me a year ago, boy, am I not good at sound bites. She said, oh, Mark, you're good at sound bites, which is great. You know, where's it gotten me? But
on my show.
Well, you know, it's a step.
It's a step.
In the right direction.
It's the right direction, right.
She, in fact, first I want to tell you about the Hillary Clinton I know, not the Hillary Clinton who's famous.
Right.
She talks in paragraphs. She's a linear, logical lawyer.
Right.
She's substantive. She knows issues cold. And she always has. Before she was the famous wife of a governor and potential president, Jimmy Carter appointed her to be the head of the Legal Services Corporation. Very substantial person. Second, privately, she is funny and delightful. And what the commentators call her cackle, which is half sexist, frankly, is what she is privately. So if she had a phony public laugh, I would tell you, privately, she's quipping, she's self-deprecating. I know a lot of politicians like you who are just, if they're not the center of attention, they go to sleep. Hillary Clinton actually, not just because of her so-called listening tour, will listen to someone less famous than she, which means everybody she talks to. She's patient, she's funny, she's warm, and it hasn't come through in public affairs.
Why? That's the issue, because the way you said it, I think we can assume the opposite of what you said comes through. I'll give you a moment that just before the Iowa primaries, if I can remember it, Hillary, in a very earnest commercial, the eyes of the world are on you as you vote. And then later you'd see a clip of Bill Clinton saying, of course they all say the same thing, but they're all on message. He's sitting and he says it with a great big smile on his face, which Hillary doesn't have. The eyes of the world are upon you. And then he looks at him and says, can you stand it? And everyone breaks up in laughter. Why can't Hillary be as funny as Huckabee? That could be the title of the show,
Well, it's a little unfair. That is, people often compare her to Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to be compared to Bill Clinton if I was a candidate, because he has the whole package. He's one in a 200 million, 300 million. She's not that in terms of her ability to do the policy and the humor.
Right.
Huckabee is a comedian, which has won him Iowa. Pat Robertson might have been president if Iowa were all that mattered, but
there's more to come.
There's a lot more to come. But I think the reason, Al Gore, everyone said this about Al Gore, who I'm sure you know, is also, privately he was a cut up and funny and delightful, as we've seen him on Letterman after he ran. He's been very funny. Publicly he was a stiff. Why? When you may be president, and your words are parsed, every verb is parsed, you get self-conscious and you don't become authentic. She is so famous, she has been so brutalized by the right wing, it's true, that she has created a carapace around her, a shield that doesn't let people through often. And the camera is very brutal. And if you look like you're inauthentic and you're harboring something, juries can see it and viewers can see it. Obama, fair or not, looks like just a regular, happy guy. He has this incandescent smile. The other night when he won, and he gave his speech, and before he gave this brilliant speech, he said, and I want to thank the love of my life, the rock of the Obama family, my wife, Michelle. And then he turned and he went, you. You.
Yeah, but with that, I saw that.
And my wife and I went, that's so real. It's not rehearsed.
I watched that too, and I said, oh, she's a tough lady. I've met her. She's a very tough lady. And, you know, and she's been complaining. The campaigns aren't good for the family. So I said to myself, yep, that's the way of telling her, you know, stick with me, it's okay. This is the way I'm thanking you in front of
it's like every spouse.
In front of the cameras. Talking about that speech, there were 3 speeches I watched. I watched Obama. Well, I watched all 4, but the 3 of which I'm interested are Obama, Clinton, and Huckabee. Okay, those 3. How would you rate those? Who do you think did the best?
Well, this is a little embarrassing. I was for 4 hours at the Air America studio.
You weren't watching,
did you? I was watching, but I wasn't hearing because I was anchoring with David Bender, one of our hosts, the Air America Iowa special.
Right.
I got home and watched the TiVo my wife had done so I could answer your questions. Obama's speech was just transcendental, or it transported people. Transcendent. Yeah. Transcendent.
Yale man to Harvard man.
Cornell.
Oh, well, Harvard Law School.
Don't ruin me. It was an eloquent and brilliant speech. And it hit the right notes, and it was sharp, and it wasn't really that he won Iowa that puts him in a position to be the nominee and the president. He rose to the moment, and when all the eyes were upon him, and Howard Dean 4 years ago, you know, did his so-called scream and ruined himself momentarily. He's now, of course, the chair of our party and doing very well. Obama rose and exceeded the moment. Hillary Clinton was, to what I saw, terrific. She was a gracious loser. But the word loser doesn't normally attach to a Clinton. They really haven't lost since Bill lost the gubernatorial re-election in '80 and then came back, and we know what happened. She looked great. She sounded calm, but of course, everyone was watching her giving a concession speech, but she didn't look like a loser. Huckabee, I didn't hear, so you tell me.
Well, here's the way I rated him. I thought that Huckabee was the best because he was so entertaining. Now, okay, now if you're going to win something like that, you would say, the pundits would say, that's the moment to be substantive. But of course, he's introducing himself to the American public, and the American public is waiting for that big-time speech, and they know what he's going to say, so he didn't say it. So I thought it was a reverse pull. On Obama, I was interested in Obama because I didn't think he came across as charming and all the things that people love about Obama. But he took the moment, he decided to take the moment to give a big-time speech. I suppose that's right. I thought Hillary was better than usual because I too have been told she's wonderful in person, but I cannot relate what you told me, others have told me, to what I see, and I peer in the screen hoping I will see it because I want to be entertained. Anyway, here's an entertaining, speaking of entertaining subjects. What do you think Bloomberg is thinking following the Iowa primary?
First, he doesn't confide in me. I thought he wouldn't and shouldn't run in 2001. Apparently, pending a recount, I was wrong. He's in a unique situation. First, he did not become mayor, and he is not potentially going to run for president merely because of his money. That's wrong. You and I know him to be funny, smarter than hell, and quite competent. But he wouldn't have been considered for mayor or for president but for his money. The money is a sine qua non, although not the only thing about him. If he weren't worth $20 billion, he wouldn't have been on the cover of Newsweek as a potential independent candidate. Second, he knows that, but he also understands how to play this game. So he's telling everybody, I'm not running. Then as soon as the light is off, his aides say, he may run. And it's an acceptable lie. As I said, Grandma, you look great. It's an acceptable lie. Third,
I'll say, Mark, you look great.
But, yeah, well, I'm not your grandma, so that counts as a truthful statement. My best guess is that if he saw wingers as nominees, if he saw John Edwards, whose substance is extraordinary, but a very harsh liberal populist message, arguably, as the Democratic nominee, and a kind of religiously based far-right Republican nominee, as Huckabee and Romney would be, because they've tethered themselves to the far right of the right-wing party, partly anti-evolution, anti-immigrant. There would be a big space in the middle for Mike Bloomberg to say, don't we want a practical person who's been a businessman and is an independent? Look at the independent turnout and enthusiasm in 07 and 08. Should Obama be the nominee? I think it's hard for Mike Bloomberg to run, to be a guy who potentially could stop the first black person to be president of the United States. What's his argument? Obama is pretty liberal, but he doesn't sound out of the mainstream or liberal. If the Republican is, hypothetically as we speak now, Huckabee or maybe Romney, Bloomberg may say, well, I'm more plausible than that. I'll spend $2 billion and see what happens. If the nominee is John McCain, I don't see how Mike Bloomberg can run.
Well, okay, but we do have, following Iowa, we have a far, it's hard to say about Huckabee. Is he far right or isn't he far right? Because on foreign policy, he's very liberal. But I guess he's a right conservative party. So that's the scenario, theoretically, at least on the right, that Bloomberg would be looking for. So your argument, I guess, is, apart from he doesn't want to spoil a black man's trip, is that maybe Obama's clogging the middle a little bit, so Bloomberg won't do it.
Well, we're assuming Obama's the nominee.
Well, I mean, that's all we know today. Yeah. Well, if it's Clinton, what if he won't run against Clinton?
My guess is Mike Bloomberg is looking like for a 2-3 corner billiard shot. He needs the Democratic nominee to be not Obama or Clinton.
I see.
If were Clinton the nominee, a practical center-left New Yorker, that's what Mike Bloomberg is. I don't see why he would, or assuming, as everyone tells me, he would run to win, not just for vanity's sake. So it requires a certain Democratic nominee, a certain Republican nominee. There aren't that many other variables.
Yeah, so
finances is not a variable.
Well, Mike Bloomberg, in fact, is left of you, isn't he?
I don't know how to answer. It's to the left of me? On what? I can't answer that.
I mean, there's no one left of you?
I haven't answered yet. It was your premise. Mike Bloomberg is socially liberal, economically pretty conservative. He believes more in free markets, I think, than in a tough EPA, a tough OSHA, for example.
I was told this weekend by a pal of his who started off on Wall Street that he and the pal organized the Wall Street, whatever they want to call themselves, investment bankers, against the Vietnam War. And that he and my pal and X others got up in Trinity Church and ran it against Vietnam War. Does that surprise you?
Mike Bloomberg can be center, right, or left, depending on the year. So I don't know what he was like in the 1960s. I know in 1999, I went to a party, well before he ran for mayor. He hated Bill Clinton. He said, this guy
hated Bill Clinton?
Hated him. Disgraceful, what he's done with Monica Lewinsky. He should be kicked out of office. He has been silent until the last couple of weeks about a thing called Iraq. This is not a small issue. I understand he's not the Secretary of State. We have the UN here. New York City kids are going and fighting and dying and killing. And you'd think he would have a position on it. So he's quite cautious and shrewd. So you're asking me, am I surprised? Since he's been a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent, he'll do what's convenient and beneficial.
Okay, now let's go back to Air America. And let's put up the question, is Air America too grim to win, the same as Hillary? In other words, Hillary has some sort of issue, shall we say, with respect to sense of humor and the ability to entertain. Huckabee's more entertaining. What has been said of left-wing radio, can I call it that? Left radio, as compared with right-wing radio, is that right-wing radio is far more entertaining than left-wing radio. Now, do you agree with that? And if so, what's your reaction to this? It's not a very nice thing to say. A guest comes in here, say you're too grim to win, but
I've heard worse.
You've heard worse.
So this is fun. Your premise is an important one. If radio or television, as we are now proving, is not entertaining, who will listen? I mean, I'm not here just reading from the congressional record. Air America was founded 3 years ago, and their opening hosts were Al Franken, and it was comedic. It was information comedically delivered. And Al Franken, of course, was the most well-known host on Air America, left to run for the Senate in Minnesota, which he's now doing quite well. We still have hosts who, Lionel in the morning from 9 to noon, Rachel Maddow especially from 6 to 8. Others are very funny. Rachel Maddow has been on MSNBC many, many nights this year doing presidential commentary as well. And so I agree that we have to be entertaining and not just grim. Second, right-wing radio can be entertaining. Rush Limbaugh, for example, has a kind of bombastic but funny presence. But they have a different kind of audience. Just like the right-wing political community is clergy-based and business-based, where a CEO or a minister will order their flock to do something, and they obey. They're kind of top-down authoritarian. Look at Bush. And so when Limbaugh says something like, there are weapons of mass destruction, and any soldier who comes back to America and protests is a phony soldier, his ditto heads, that's what they're called, go, yes, sir, that's right. You saw how a supermajority of Fox listeners and conservative radio listeners believe there still is weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So they're uneducable. Air America listeners, Bill Clinton once said that Democrats have to fall in love, Republicans fall in line. So our audience is, a liberal means someone who's tolerant, who's open-minded, and so are very much more open-minded, and don't just listen to our hosts. One more thing. There are market problems why liberal radio is having a hard time. Who owns most of the radio stations? Clear Channel, a very conservative place. How is radio financed? It's corporate advertising based, and a lot of corporations put liberal radio, like Air America, on no-buy lists. They won't advertise.
It's still on no-buy list?
Absolutely, because while our listeners are as likely to buy a car as anyone who listens to Sean Hannity or Bill O'Reilly, there's a discrimination. So there's a market problem. All I want to be, I'm the free enterpriser here. I hope the corporations
You're a corporate guy now.
And owners of stations don't have any conservative bias and let our talent, if their ratings are up, let them on. If they're not, kick them off. I want a market-based system, which would help us. One last thing. Air America went bankrupt a year ago. Mismanagement, overspending. My family bought it out of bankruptcy. I'm now the president of Air America. We're shrinking losses, and I believe we'll turn it around and make a profit in 2009.
2009, make a profit. Mark Green, guess what? This time went so fast, and we've come to an end. So you have a chance to sum up your argument, since we were both trained as lawyers. And remember, the issue is Hillary Clinton too grim to win, and I want to add to that, and is Air America too grim to win? What is your answer?
We're not too grim to win on Air America because we're right, small r, because Bush has been such a disaster and the right wing has taken America in the wrong direction. And so our audience is growing as Bush is shrinking. As for Hillary Clinton, I don't think humor is the only issue. She got locked into appearing to be the centrist establishment candidate in a year when there's a tidal movement toward throw out the bums. And she has 5 days in New Hampshire to change her message and alter her personality, not to be a phony, but to show the inner Hillary. So New Hampshire connects to her in a way that Iowa didn't.
Mark Green. Hey, thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
Nice to talk to a big-time media executive.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming by. And come by next week and learn more about the digital age. For the digital age, I am James Goodale. Good night.